How about y'all come on in and let's have us another visit here on the Humble Show. I am Grant Fletcher, and I am being joined by one of my two co-hosts, Brandon Cox. There he is. Moonbeam, we think, is perhaps maybe, I don't know. We think she's alive, but pretty sure she's sleeping or something happened because
indisposed.
I don't know if you know this, but she's got a lot going on. The Grindhouse is opening back up as we're recording this. We're recording this late this week. It's opening back up tomorrow. So, a lot is going on right now, and I'm sure she is. I'm pretty sure she's exhausted. So, here we are, Brandon. But Brandon, how are you?
I'm doing pretty cool. I had myself an eventful Sunday. It was a good time. Bought some records. Had some amazing, the best Chinese food I've ever had in my life. Shout out to Mr. Chin's in Jackson. It is a Chinese restaurant attached to an Asian grocery store, so you know that they're getting the best ingredients because you get to see them. It's great. I know for a fact that a lot of I say Americanized Chinese food, a lot of their dishes are incredibly Chinese, like legitimate Chinese dishes. They're fantastic. They're wonderful, and I got to take somebody there to it. They got to experience it, and they enjoyed it. So it was a good time all around.
Nice. That's really cool. Yeah, I think you that is a really good example of, like you said, the good ingredients there. There's a place right down the road from my house called the Asian Seafood Market, and it's the same thing. It's like it's the Asian grocery store, and then it's not attached, but it's in the same parking lot as the seafood market, and Asian seafood house, and it's actually what it is it's the grocery store in the back, right? Mm-hmm. And then the building in the front was a Hollywood Video a long time ago. It was a video rental store, and then it became like an Anytime Fitness, and then now it's this. So you can kind of imagine like what the size and shape of this building is, just based on the fact that I'm telling you it's a video rental store that was in a parking lot in front of a grocery store. You kind of know what it looks like, right?
I love that. See, here's the funny thing. Mr. Chin's used to be a Chuck E. Cheese.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
It was a Chuck E. Cheese in like an outlet, like mini mall area. Mm-hmm. And I didn't check this time, but at least back before the which, by the way, I didn't mention this, mostly because I don't know how many of our listeners have been to Mr. Chin's, but they remodeled and expanded in that building, and now it's just so much more spacious. They have so many more items. It's great, but at least back in the day, you could go to their restrooms, and they were still decorated as if it was a Chuck E. Cheese. It was wonderful. It added to the experience.
Yeah, it sounds about right here, Brandon. If you're watching on YouTube right now, Brandon is all out of the frame here, so I'm trying to get him back on track. But
okay.
Yeah, no, just bear with me while we do that. But yeah, I mean, that sounds about right, I guess. Like a lot of places, especially like if it's a mom and pop kind of place, like they're not going to bother, like undoing the Chuck E. Cheese-ifying of the venue, I suppose. So
yeah.
Anyway, it's crazy, but I love it. Yeah.
I hope that the changing of the frame is not too laborious, because let me tell you, Bob is in what I like to refer to. I don't know if I've referred to it before. He is in pink nose mode, 110%.
Okay.
So I was told this not too long ago. If like the pinker the cat's nose is, the more up to mischief they are prone to be. And let me tell you, Bob is bouncing off the damn walls right now.
Okay. Well, I already have you framed up, but I have you framed like I normally do with the section of the couch there, so you can see Bob sleeping on the back of the couch, but it sounds like he's not going to be sleeping anytime soon.
He was sleeping so well a moment ago, and then someone closed their car door in the parking lot, and he wasn't having none of that.
Yeah, of course. Why would he be having that? Yeah. Why would he be? I had something I wanted to talk about, but I guess I'll wait for Moonbeam to get here about some movie watching we did recently.
Yeah.
But it was something we kind of touched on the last episode, but it can wait for the next one, so it's fine. But yeah,
I have a little bit of movie, I guess, know-how that I came across recently. I and this is just me, like especially whenever I was younger, I adored knowing what the worst films were. Like what the like the bad like bottom 100 of the IMDb list was, and I kind of like reveled in that. It's like, man, look at all these people who tried their best and it ended up the worst, which is just a bad way to live. You shouldn't live like that. And there's one film that I've always known about that is notoriously not so great. I do know that it was one of the bottom 100 at one point, but now it's not so bad. Ballistics X versus Sever. It was a film in the early 2000s, starring two powerhouses, Antonio Banderas and Lucy Liu. I don't know how you could go wrong with that. Well, actually, no. I now know how you could go wrong with that combo. Um, it was produced by an absolute crook who did not know what he was doing, who mainly used his films as a method of cheating Germany out of tax money.
Yeah.
Um, it everybody like it's such a shame because it was a I believe a Taiwanese director. It was his first American film. He was kind of set up because he was told like, hey, there's a we're kind of you gotta be careful with the budget. We're only like our budget's $30 million. The budget was like $70 million, and the producer pocketed 40 million of it.
Wow.
Um, Guy was really enthusiastic, had a real passion for like the classic like not yeah I guess by this point it's classic Hong Kong action film like the John Woo sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Made an excellent film, and then the producer recut it all to be more like The Matrix. And like they fired the guy that was doing the editing, they fired the guy that was doing the music, and they just made it awful, which is such a shame because there's a lot of great action scenes in it. But yeah, once again, Hollywood proves to be a real cool place.
Yeah, that would have been the time. That would have been the period of time where everyone would have wanted to emulate the Matrix.
Yeah.
So that it makes sense that someone would say, "Oh yeah, no, we'll just do this, and it'll be, um, really successful." You know what'll happen, Brandon? We
What
have
will
this movie
happen?
called Cars, and it's really successful. So you know what we're gonna do? We're gonna make a movie called Planes,
Oh
and
yes.
it's gonna be just like Cars, but with planes,
And
and it's going to
it's
be
gonna be
really
great.
successful. So that's what happens a lot of times in Hollywood. They just make really awesome, really great decisions.
Yeah. It's it was a very poignant part of the video that I saw. Lucy Liu was apparently like, and like everybody was a huge fan of the director. He was 27 years old
Wow.
directing this movie, and like all these like Antonio Banderas, Lucy, but especially Lucy Liu, huge fans of the director. They did some behind the scenes footage, and like Lucy Liu is like gushing over this director, and like there's like a scene in this behind the scenes thing where like she's giggling and like laughing and hugging him from the back, and it just looks like a cool palling around sort of time, and like everybody had a great time doing it. Antonio Banderas got slightly burnt in one of the action
Whoa.
scenes that he did, and he was like, oh yeah, it's part of the movie, yeah. He was fine with it, he had a good time, everybody had a good time, and then people had to and I'm not saying that it was going to be a 10 out of 10 film, but clearly without the meddling this would have been something else.
Yeah, and I mean, you would think that he would have gotten burned like in The Mask of Zorro or something like that. So,
Yeah.
um, because that is a lot of action in that movie.
Oh,
Not
absolutely.
this one. Once upon a time in Mexico, maybe perhaps even that would have happened, but
Yeah, yeah.
but it was this one. It
Or
was this one instead.
Puss in Boots,
or, or maybe even Puss in Boots. You don't know what happens in the voiceover booth sometimes. It gets a little
dude,
intense, man.
it
It gets a
gets
little
wacky.
intense.
You're surrounded by very flammable material at all times.
Man, we had a lot of news break for Alabama Comic Con, and it's almost like it's a good thing that it's so far away in September. Well, I
Yeah.
say so far away. It's like we always say like, oh, that's a ways away, and then like the next thing you know, it's here. So I
Like,
mean, people are
whoops.
already buying tickets for it, so it's kind of like maybe it's not that far away.
Yeah.
Um, but so we have Ron Simmons is going to be joining us for Alabama Comic Con,
Yes. A
which I'm really
class
excited
act.
about. Ron Simmons is really just a really cool, awesome guy. I was a big fan of Ron Simmons back in the day. And Brandon, so I don't know if you know the whole story with Ron, like, right? So like, as far as a
I
wrestler, but
yeah, yeah,
the
yeah.
thing about Ron is, was, and will forever be a one bad dude. Um,
Yeah, he seems like it.
yeah, and like had that reputation of like, don't mess with Ron. Like he's a real nice guy, he's a good dude, but maybe don't get on his bad side because that might be terrifying.
Might set him off.
And yeah, Ron was like a star football player at Florida State, known very well for that.
Yeah.
And then played pro for a while, and then became a wrestler. And I was told so whenever Ron was at Florida State, there was this old song called Big Bad John. Well, they changed it for him to Big Bad Ron.
Yeah.
And back at Southern Nerds Fest, Sting told me that they were at a show one night, a long time ago, in the 80s,
Yeah.
and the DJ was like looking over the list of who was all going to be there. And this was like when everybody didn't necessarily have like their own personalized songs, this was before that
Right.
point in time. This was kind of like wrestlers walking out to music was a bit newer concept. And he had music on cassettes. And he's looking over there and he goes, oh, yeah. He's like, Ron Simmons. He's like, he goes, I actually have the Big Bad Ron song on tape here. And he's like, but I'm not going to do that to him.
I got the single.
Yeah, I have the single. And so whenever he left, Sting switched the tapes.
Oh, hell
And
yeah.
so Ron walks out as Big Bad Ron is playing. And he says he sees Ron realize that that's the song that's playing. And he just gets like frustrated and like just like takes off for the ring and gets in there and starts looking over and like making the like cut it like face or whatever. And then he said match is over and Ron gets to the back and he's like, who did that? Like, who did this? Who? And Singh said he just like went and just shut his mouth. And he said I waited 2 weeks to tell Ron, oh, by the way, that was me. Because
so he didn't wrestle because of that.
no, he did wrestle. He did. But I'm saying like after his match was over, he went to the back. He was like, who did that?
Okay,
And,
okay.
yeah.
I thought you meant like he got in the ring, he kind of molded over, was like, nah, this has thrown off the vibes considerably.
Yeah. And then Ron went on to be like, world champion. Like,
Yeah.
First black world champion ever in wrestling. And then he went to WWE and he was Farouk for quite a while.
Yeah,
That was the end of the character. And so he had this group called the Nation of Domination. So last week, it's announced that Ron Simmons is going to be at Alabama Comic Con. And then the next day, it's announced that D'Lo Brown is going to be at Alabama Comic Con.
Yeah.
And people are like, hold on. Something's happening, right? Like people start getting excited.
Yeah.
And they're like, okay, like if you threw in The Godfather, like this would be a proper Nation of Domination reunion. Like if people like I saw it happening on Facebook, on Instagram, they were like, all right, you have Ron Simmons, you have D'Lo Brown, two of like the most prominent figures of that big wrestling faction. And the thing about wrestling factions is this, right? They're kind of like bands. If they go on long enough, the personnel changes out a good bit.
Yeah, of course.
But like they're talking about those three are being like, the main ones. And so sure enough, the next day we announced that Charles Wright, aka the Godfather, aka Papa Shango, aka Kama Mustafa, will be there. So he was Kama
Dude,
Mustafa.
I love all
those.
I love
In the
all those
Nation of
names so
Domination.
much.
Yeah. So yeah, everybody's like losing their all the wrestling fans are losing their minds over this Nation of Domination reunion that's happening in Birmingham this September. I'm really excited too, man. It was a really big part of my wrestling viewing as a kid.
I'm excited mostly because of just all those names. Like
Yeah.
not only the names, but Nation of Domination.
Yeah, the Nation of
God, that's
Domination
cool.
was their group, and they had a lot of people, like I said, come and go from that. But they were like the three big ones as far as like, I mean, The Rock was in the group for a little while, not long, but a
Yeah,
little while.
yeah,
But as far as like being known for having been in that stable, that faction, those are the three big ones.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, no, yeah. So Charles Wright was most famous for being a character called the Godfather,
Oh yes.
who was a pimp. Just so we're clear.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, he
He
had
this character was written. Just for clarification, this character was written before The Godfather was filmed.
no, no. This was like mid '90s,
Ah,
like
no, no,
mid to
no.
late
Back
'90s.
in the '60s, they're like, hey, look, there's gonna be this wrestling character. That look, we
Yeah.
need to get this to the copyright office, and they didn't get there in time.
No, no. He always had, ladies following him around and
Marlon Brando was at that next booth whenever
yeah.
they were writing, in the diners. Like, wait a second, wait a gosh darn second, I got an idea.
No, no, yeah. It was not like a mafioso kind of character. He's a pimp. Like that's it. He has a cigar, he's got the hat with the feather in it. That's the whole thing. Chains, everything like that. Kama Mustafa was kind of more of like a martial artist kind of guy, like a Jean Claude Van Damme sort of type, like like someone you would see in like one of those movies kind of
Yeah,
characters.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then Papa Shango was a voodoo, was a witch doctor type character.
What a combo.
Yeah, I know. So yeah, he wore like the face paint, with the skull face paint and the big top hat and everything like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. For a while, so a friend of mine is a guy by the name of Stevie Richards, and they had this group called the Right to Censor, and basically it was a parody of like all like the moms groups that were speaking out about WWE's programming and just
Yeah.
wrestling programming in general. And
Yeah.
so they would try to come in and like clean everything up, And
Yeah,
so at one
I
point in
think I
time,
might
they
have
like,
seen a few of those. It
yeah,
might not have been the Right to Censor group, but it might have been a very similar group. I remember them like parodying that sort of
yes.
behavior.
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, for a while they like converted the Godfather to join them, and he was the good father at that point in time. So, but then he went back to what it was. So yeah, that's the trio we're bringing there, and it's gonna be a great time. So that's the big Alabama Comic Con news that we have for you this week, and that's
Yeah.
your wrestling education for you. Although I don't know if you knew this, Brandon, because we've
Yeah.
talked about JBL a lot and how much we like JBL.
Oh,
And Ron
absolutely.
and
Yeah.
JBL were tag team partners for a while.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. They were called the Acolytes. They were kind of like this weird, like occult-ish type group. It
I
wasn't
dig
really
that.
ever like spoken like what it was about them that was a cult. They just had like symbols on their, pants, and they would like paint on these symbols. And then eventually the Acolytes morphed into the APA, which is the Acolytes Protection Agency, where other people on the show, they were like bodyguards for hire, basically, was the idea.
Yeah.
And they got paid to drink beer on TV, like, and it wasn't like they just like gave them apple juice and whatever. They drank beer on TV.
That's so they were living the dream.
They were living the dream. They were living the
Yeah.
dream. And JBL even has told us that like there were a couple times where they were filming whatever scenes they were filming,
Yeah.
and like the producers were like, "Hey guys, we need to wrap this up. Like we got to get it done." And they were like, "Why? Are we short on time?" And they said, "No, you're slurring your words too much, and it's getting worse. And we've got to we need to actually film this thing for
Yeah,
TV
yeah,
for
yeah.
real." So yeah, that was that was. If you're ever wondering, like, do they actually drink beer on TV? The answer is, if it's wrestling, probably.
Yeah, yeah. They're not supposed to, and they're not gonna they're not gonna
Yeah.
admit it until like 20 years later.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Of course.
that's gonna be I'm gonna try that move at work tomorrow. Just like, start having a few beers, and they're like, hey Brandon, you're gonna have to wrap this up. Like, oh, oh dang, I didn't even realize the time. Like, no, you're just you're having work beers, and that's not allowed.
We actually don't let you do that here. That's the thing.
Yeah, which I mean, hey, we can't do it because of woke.
You're right. You know what? Woke really ruined work beers for everybody.
Woke
And
woke culture is the reason my kids were taken away from me.
This is the first I'm hearing of it. So you know what? Let's just move on, I guess. Hey man, I've got a question for you here before we wrap this thing up.
Yeah.
Because we went, we had this conversation recently in our house, where I don't know what it was. I don't even know what set it off. I'm not quite sure where we were, but we came to this realization that my daughter had never had hamburger helper. And,
Huh.
I'm sure there's like reasons for that or whatever, but it was one of those things where my wife and I looked at each other and we were like, I kind of feel like this is like a rite of passage, like there, you should have had it. Like, it's not like it's amazing, but also for what it is, it's pretty good.
Look,
Um, yeah,
I am a total snooty, little like, oh, they didn't use enough this and that. I'm not gonna go back. But like, look, like I feel like it really resonated with me, and I'm sure that everybody's seen it at this point. There was some sort of like, I'm sure it was a TikTok, and then I saw it as a MySpace reel, down the line. But it was someone who was like, hey, like, fellas, if you came home and your woman presented you with this, what would you think? It was like hamburger helper with like a piece of white bread, or like a piece of like toasted white bread or
yeah,
something. And like the guy who was responding was like, oh, I'd eat the hell out of that.
right,
I'd eat the hell out of, like, if someone decided to take time out of their day to make me a meal after a long day of work. Oh yeah, I'm gonna eat the hell out of that. I'm
yeah,
gonna get seconds. And that is the way I feel about hamburger helper, but like really in any meal that's made for me. But yeah, hamburger helper, that got me through some rough times in college, and I haven't had it since. But you know what? I bet I have made a handful of dishes that I should have realized at the time, like, oh, this is basically hamburger
yeah. I
helper that
mean,
I
it's
just
like
made.
sometimes you make something and like at its core, it actually is hamburger helper.
Yeah,
Um,
like,
And so I was, yeah, well, I'm glad that you went off and said all that because I was kind of wondering, like, what is that thing? Because, like, everybody has those moments where, like, man, maybe we're kind of short this week or whatever,
yeah,
through your life. And, you resort to the hamburger helper. And I
yeah.
was like, man, kid, I feel like you should have had this at some point in time. And we didn't. So we went this week, whenever we did our grocery shopping and we picked some up.
Hmm.
So it's yet to happen, but she's gonna have to, she's gonna have to pass through that door at some point in time this week. It's gonna
Yeah,
be a thing.
yeah. And here's the thing: if she turns her nose up at it, I think that she's just fronting, because there's nothing like, it's good food,
She
like
won't. She won't.
there's
She's one thing about my kid is she's actually not a picky eater. She will go through whatever, and I think
heck
she's
yeah,
about to
heck
hit a
yeah,
growth spurt right now because it's ramping up. But
yeah.
um, yeah. So I wonder, like, what's did you have a favorite hamburger helper? I want to know from you and the Humble fam, what is the best variety?
Here's the thing. I was gonna like be sheepish about this, but like this was an even more economical option. They had tuna helper,
Yeah. Yeah.
which,
Okay.
man, there were moments whenever I was, once again back in college, barely scraping by. Um Tuna is canned tuna, especially canned tuna in water as opposed to
The
to
oil.
oil.
Yeah.
If it's like canned tuna in water, man, you can get that for so much cheaper. Like if you look around, I'm sure like these days it's like 80 cents a can, but I think back in the day it was like 33 cents a can. And man, you can make a meal in like $2.50.
Yeah. It's true. It really is true. Yeah, tuna helpers is the way to go. I think we picked up the beef stroganoff is what we went with. So
Oh
we went a
yeah,
little
oh
little
yeah.
high a little high class with it this week. That's the only one I really remember. That and the tuna is of course. So, but I'm curious
I
if
mean,
anyone
there's
else
there's
has one
classic
they remember.
cheeseburger.
Oh, of course, yes. Oh man, how could I forget, dude? You can't leave out the cheeseburger.
That one cannot be skipped. There's actually one. I feel like there's with any sort of cheap recipe, there's a barrier to entry, because like, oh, this meal's really cheap as long as you have all these seasonings and you already have this and you already have it. But yeah, it's cheap. There's one meal that I still swear by, that you can make like 8 servings of for like $8.
Mm-hmm.
black bean quesadillas.
Okay.
You can like just you don't have to have other than like cooking utensils. You don't have to have any other like sort of ingredients. You can go get the black beans, get the tortillas, get the taco seasoning, get the cheese, get the cilantro, the red onion, and you're good.
Yeah.
All that together, I'm sure these days is a little bit more, but you can make a full meal that tastes pretty fantastic for like eight full meals for $8.
Yeah. Got your starch in there, got your protein in there, all your seasonings. It sounds about right.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
That's a better question. Not like what's your favorite like variety of hamburger helper, but like what's your favorite like, you know, poor kid food.
Yeah, struggle meal.
What's your favorite? Yes, what's your favorite struggle meal? That's what I want to know. You know, was it the ramen noodles with an egg in it? You know, just to
Yeah.
jazz it up a little bit there. I mean, what is the struggle meal in your household, in your college apartment, where you're from, like your area? What is it? That's a better question. I think that's the way to go. Although, man, you can dress up ramen noodles, even if you're not struggling.
You can absolutely.
Yeah, I
I went to
gotcha.
the Asian grocery store today and got some amazing, fantastic ramen noodles.
Good, good. That's the way to do it. You know, there's so many varieties now. I mean, why would you limit yourself? Right?
Yeah.
You go to that Asian grocery store and you load up, get it all
Yeah.
done, and they're cheap too. There's no reason not to. Just
Yeah.
yeah, delicious and cheap. That's the motto of this episode. In fact, I think I'm going to call this episode "Delicious and Cheap." That's what
That's
we're gonna
good.
go
That's
with.
good.
But
Do
anyways,
do title it ballistic uh uh what was it? Something in cheap?
yeah, delicious and cheap,
Yeah, ballistic
ballistic,
delicious versus cheap.
delicious versus cheap. Yes, of course.
Oh yes.
Because you gotta have those both in there. Yeah,
Oh
that's
yes.
where we are right now. So anyway, that's what I want to know from the Humble Fam this week, y'all. Let me know in the comments. Let me know on our socials. Let me know wherever you are. And like I said, we're gonna go ahead and just wrap this one up here now because we couldn't get with Moonbeam because she is very busy. There comes Bob
Oh look,
walking
he's
across
ready to
the
settle
back.
down now.
I put him in frame
Good.
here. He's
Good.
just he's so innocent looking right now. He's acting like nothing has happened and everything is normal, everything's cool, and that he didn't do anything terrible at all today.
Of course he didn't.
All right. Well, look, now that Bob is ready to settle in, maybe he'll let Brandon go to bed here as well. So, y'all check this out. If you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Give us a like, give us a rating, leave us a comment wherever you are, and make sure you're back here for another visit on The Humble Show next week. But until then, stay humble.